Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the India International Brand Summit 2021. The first session for the day is themed around the retail revolution, digital natives versus adopters. Before I announce our esteemed panelists, on behalf of everyone at IIBS, I'd like to thank our partners for extending their support for the event. Thanking Magnon Group, NewsX, What's Hot, Agency Reporter, Talent Track, and Appreciate Books. So the first speaker I'd like to introduce is Mr. Ankit Dhingra, Head of Marketing, Mobiles and TVs at Amazon. Ankit is a marketing professional with close to 13 years of experience across FMCG with Coca-Cola, fashion and e-commerce with Myntra, and consumer durables with Lieco and Amazon India. He is one of the marketers who may have undergone the transition from working on a digital dinosaur to companies that have been born and grown in the digital era. Welcome to the panel, Ankit.
Thank you, and I'm happy to share my insights from whatever I've learned on the topic today.
Great. So the next speaker I'd like to invite is Mr. Ramesh Srinivasan, Director of Marketing at PhonePe. In his current role, along with his team, he drives the digital payments and financial services awareness and adoption for Indian customers. In his previous role at Flipkart, he has worked on developing and repositioning the Flipkart brand over the years and laid foundation for their brand loyalty and private labels ecosystem. In a career spanning over a decade, working on digital-only brands, he has donned several hats, including brand head, consumer marketer, media planner, insights head, product marketer, and brand developer. While on the personal front, he confesses to be guilty of being a laggard when it comes to tech adoption. He has battled this conundrum as marketer, and this should be a great backdrop for what we are discussing today. Welcome to the panel, Ramesh.
Thank you, Bhakti, for that warm welcome. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Yes, really looking forward to it. So now I'd like to invite the moderator for this session, Denny Joseph, Business Director at Magnon EG Plus. Denny comes with almost 2 decades of experience working across both ATL and BTL forms of advertising. His experience in ATL comprises working for brands in FMCG, consumer durables, consumer electronics, and automobiles. Some of the brands he has worked with include Coca-Cola, Nokia, Dabur, Sharp, Suzuki Motorcycle India, Unicharm, and many more. Welcome to the panel, Denny.
Thank you, Bhakti. Thank you so much. Hi, Ankit. Hi, Ramesh.
Hey, Denny.
And I'd also like to invite
Hello.
our next speaker. Hi. So the next speaker I'd like to welcome is Mr. Tony McDermott, Marketing Director at Valvoline for Southeast Asia. He moved to Asia after 10 years with Valvoline in Australia. Prior to that, he worked across marketing roles in magazine publishing and the liquor industry. Having seen the rapid transition of the digital age, he very well understands that while consumer behavior has not changed, communication and shopping behavior has. And that is what we are going to talk about today. Welcome to the panel, Tony.
Thanks, Bhakti. Pleased to be here. Had a little moment with the technical glitch. Apparently there's a screen which closes the camera. I didn't know that, and I didn't have the good glasses on, couldn't see it. So thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, it looks pretty fine now. I'm glad the issue got sorted out. And over to you, Denny.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. Great to have you all here, Ankit, Ramesh, and Tony. And the topic that we have for today is the retail revolution, digital natives versus adopters, right? And we have some of the industry's best here and spanning both sides. We have both we have both brands with a legacy footprint, and we also have brands that have gone off the internet. And that makes a perfect mix for the topic for today, right? What we look into in detail is that there are two halves of this retail revolution. One half is comprises of the brand verse, and here we see brands that are born off the internet and thriving off the internet, locking horns with brands that have existed from much before and have a much bigger and traditional footprint, right? We'll talk about that. And on the other hand, we have the consumer verse, where we have people who've been born much before the internet era are still there as consumers in the market. And on the other hand, we have people born in the internet age who take to the internet and services based off it like fish, right? So there's a lot to discuss. Let's just jump in. Before we start, let me just set the context for the entire retail revolution with a few data points that I came across on early metrics, right? So just to set the context, here's what we have. So 18% of all retail sales worldwide in 2020 came from online, right? Uh, Next is 60% of all millennial purchases in 2020 came from online, right? Going on to the brand side, 79% of customers favor live chat support as their primary customer support mechanism because it actually allows for faster response and it's almost instantaneous. And 67% of B2C businesses are now using live chats for support. That shows the transition. And to top it all off, the projections for 2022 for e-com sales is $5.7 trillion, right? So I guess that sets the context for what we're going to discuss here. That being said, let's jump in, right? My first topic that I would like to put out there and get all of your views on essentially is, in very broad terms, can we talk about the changes that we have seen in the retail mix between general trade, modern trade, and e-commerce? And just to give it a spin, uh, how has the pandemic affected this? Can I come to you first, Ankit, for a response?
Sure. So I think everyone I think is aware on how trade has changed. I think India used to be a heavily general trade led market when I was doing FMCG back in the early 2010s. And I think that's when we started seeing the digital inflection. And I think over the years, with 4G launches, with telecom penetration growing, with smartphone penetration growing, we have seen a big change anyway. I think COVID only accelerated that further. So I think what you have called out is correct, where I think digital is no longer an option. I remember, I think my Coke days, when brand managers were afraid of digital, they did not know how to invest in digital, and global teams had to nudge a brand manager to invest 5% of the marketing monies in digital. I think now that is completely changed on its head, where more than 50% of offline brands investments may also be going in online channels. So I think that's at least the marketing mix change that I have seen. And even in terms of the retail mix change, there are industry like smartphones where you already have 50% of the overall sales in India happening on online channels. So I think some of those details and some of those data points are already in the public domain. And we at least know that every industry, I think, has seen a complete growth trajectory change, especially post COVID, when customers' preference on adopting online channels has also increased manyfold.
Thank you so much for summarizing it so succinctly, Ankit. Ramesh, can I come to you for your response on this?
Yeah, sure. So, well, Ankit definitely is a veteran from the background of retail and has seen the transformation, right? I'll probably touch upon the consumer side of it, right, as to why you see this transition, and why has it so rapidly increased in the past few years. Specifically, you mentioned COVID, Denny. I think consumer journeys and behavior change. I mean, there's enough and plenty of study done out there, and some of the fundamentals don't change, right? There are two very key things that require from any behavior change to happen, and fog behaviors model is one of the classic ones, and it still holds so true, right? There is motivation and there is ability, and the point in the life cycle of a category or an industry where motivation and ability see an inflection is when you start seeing changes of channels, right? So I think with the advent of e-commerce or even modern trade, the way retail was shaped and designed actually redefined affordability, right? Redefined access to a large extent. And I think both of these were very good pegs for the motivation from a consumer standpoint to become very ripe. I'm getting a lot of access to erstwhile products which were not available in one place, right? Or even in my city or town, and that's the beauty of e-commerce. And a lot of those products were not priced in a way that made it affordable for me, right? So the motivation has been developing with modern trade and e-commerce both, right? I think the ability is on the consumer, and I think that definitely reached an inflection point with the advent of COVID. Not by choice of anyone, but a lot of avenues which were erstwhile available all of a sudden became unavailable due to lockdown. And India and the people being the way are, काफी jogadu is what we say, right? So they find opportunities and they overcome their ability. The inertia to transact online or to shop online was overcome by need, and I think which is why there's a huge influx. So I think the industry and the category overall is very ripe. Motivation has been at play. Ability is now coming to the forth, and I think this trend is going to see a and an even more upward rise in the years to come.
Perfect. Thank you, Ramesh. Tony, I'm going to come to you with this because you represent a brand that was established front and center in a traditional format, right? And how do you see this shifting for you in this new day and age of the internet?
Interestingly, engine oil is something that's never really had much of an online transaction situation for the consumer. For the trade, it's a different matter, but it depends on the market. The challenge to selling oil online is to facilitate ease of delivery. And if you've got a bricks and mortar option literally around the corner, then there's no real benefit to buying it online unless it's cheaper or better or faster or has some other consumer benefit that you value. Um, and having seen, because I actually moved to Asia mid COVID pandemic, so I've had the opportunity to see kind of the before and after in both environments. And certainly in Asia, because of the well-established delivery infrastructure for pretty much anything, I can actually buy engine oil and have it delivered same day in most parts of the region. So there certainly will be an opportunity for retail buyers with online transactions, but I think fundamentally some products and some categories lend themselves to the online purchase delivery and other products don't necessarily. But for trade customers, so workshops or car dealers or truck dealers or motorcycle dealers, the benefit for them is that instead of conducting a transaction in the traditional way, someone would visit you, you would ring somebody up, or you now would either move forward to like an email transaction or an online ordering system. But the challenge there is that if I'm buying engine oil online because I'm a workshop, I want the same consumer experience as I get with Amazon. It's like when I go to Amazon, it's really easy and it's nice and it's friendly and I can track my purchase and everything's great. But if I want to buy engine oil for my workshop the same way, then my expectation is that I have the same customer experience. Because if I don't, then I'm going to be disappointed. So the onus is on, let's call it the business to deliver the same CX in their category as best practices.
Right, Tori. So perfect. Thank you for that, Tori. So I'm going to come to you with the next question. So which essentially is around. So we had the mail order catalog system in the days that went by. Do you just think that this is a new glorified version of that, or is there more that we can read into this?
I think in simple terms, the short answer is yes. The mail order catalog was the Model T, and today online retailing, I'm going to reference Amazon because they're here with us in the studio, and I think they are the best practice model. Amazon is the Bugatti Veyron of the mail order catalog of our generation, but it is the Bugatti Veyron with the Model T price. So you're getting everything better, faster, personalized, and delivered to your door. And so I would say, I see something I want, I choose, I pay, it gets delivered. That's the transaction. I, as a consumer, want something or need something. And so it's just the start and the end is the same. It's the in-between part that's different. And so the speed and efficiency has improved, as is most things in the developing economies, economic development. And so I say yes. It sort of really depends on the shopper, though. So the focus of this conversation is about adopters versus digital natives. Now, some people won't buy online because they're afraid or they're stubborn or they don't believe in it or you just can't convince them. Whereas other people will literally buy every aspect of their life online. And so, that's the thing. So I think, yes, it is a mail order catalog of the 21st century, but it is only it's for most customers, but not all categories.
Well, perfectly answered there, Tony. So, yep, you've shed light on a very important aspect of this equation, which is the consumer, so to say. So, in this entire tug of war, the consumer attention is the bone of contention, right? So essentially, have we seen a change or an evolution, or what would you call out as the key differences between online and offline shoppers? Ankit, can I come to you with that?
Sure. So I think if I have to just talk about the mail order, I think India was not really ever in the mail order era. We possibly had coupons coming in from brands like Coupon Dunia at one point in time, so we may not fully appreciate it. But according to me, I think e-commerce is so much more than mail order, at least in my assessment, because the customer engages with e-commerce and it allows for engagement, which mail order sadly never did. Mail order was never on demand. It would show up on your door on a particular day, not when you need it. So that I think is a big worry. Here, Amazon is on demand, so you can choose it any time of your choosing and your liking. And I think whether it is the interactivity where you can interact, you can have multiple gamification modes on a e-commerce platform, and entertainment channels now also emerging out of e-commerce as well, which was never available on a mail order, or about the depth of information. So I think the mail order was never linked to a AR experience or a QR experience, which could tell you a video or a customer image about a product as well. And I think all of those are reasons why e-commerce is potentially a superior or a much superior version of the mail order catalog, which tells you a lot more and allows the customer to drill as deep as they want to about the product. And it allows for social proof. So mail order catalog only told you what the manufacturer or what the advertiser wanted you to know. Here, I think e-commerce also allows you to see what other customers are saying about the product, which I think the mail order was never fully able to surface. So I think from all of those standpoints, it's a complete change of what a mail order did, where some of the things are similar, where it is at least advertising channel, where it gets the customer to be aware of the product that the advertiser wants to advertise. But on each of the other parameters, it is very different. And I think the areas on speed, which I think Tony also spoke about, are true, because it's almost like instant gratification if you can get a product in a day with the Prime subscription as well. So that's why it's combining the joys of instant gratification with a much more immersive experience than what was earlier available to mankind overall. And I think that's why there is some natural attraction and entertainment that is also being provided by e-commerce. And
Can I
according
just
to me, I think the point said, yeah, please.
Sorry, yeah, Tony.
I just wanted to talk to that point. The thing about the customer satisfaction experience. So not only do I get the online shopping experience, which is yay, I'm excited. Then I get the looking forward to experience because my package is on its way, and then I get it's delivered, and then I get another round of satisfaction. So instead of having like maybe just one, now I get three. So um, I'm engaged and excited all the way along, so that you're reinforcing, all aspects of buying and satisfaction.
Yeah, I think that's why the customers keep coming back as well, whether it is about order tracking or about even writing a review after post use experience as well. And that's why it's a much more engaging experience for the customer across the funnel, from need generation to need being served as well. And that's why I think e-commerce plays a much more interweaved role into the customer's journey. And I think on the customer, I think what Tony was mentioning was correct. That there are some of us who have always grown up with offline, who have always lived a certain way, and similar to any other behavior change, it will have its own ups and downs, and there will be inflection points, similar to I think what Ramesh was referring to as well. India, incidentally, has been benefited by two of such inflection points. One was on demonetization, which was artificial and which created a payment way where people got used to making payments online using QR codes and all other forms of payment as well. And second, I think, was COVID, which allowed people to understand that you don't physically need to step out for fulfilling a need, and the need can be fulfilled by other channels, including e-commerce as well. So I think that's the reason why India has been in some ways lucky. And while some of the new innovations on digital and on e-commerce or modes of delivery may emerge from India as well, where India may be the pioneer on some of these innovations in the coming years, in my view.
Oh, lovely exchange. Thank you so much, Ankit and Tony, for that. Ramesh, can I just come to you to just call out the key differences that you notice between online and offline shoppers? Do you see any stark differences, and do you see any hurdles to conversion?
All right, so I have a slightly contrarian view to the topic of discussion today because I do not see the world divided as natives or adopters, and I'll try and present my case as to why I think that. Right, I think
Sure.
just like there is no complete 100% product or 100% service, it's always a mishmash of the two. Right, I think even in the world that we live in, there are folks who would have started the journey earlier from a consumer standpoint, some who are onboarding it. But even in that segment, if you see, there is the behavior that is displayed is I probably am comfortable shopping online or transacting online for certain categories, for certain things, but there are certain things I'll absolutely go and do offline, right? So there's no purest view that I'm a completely digital native. And even if you see it from the merchant perspective, right? I think Ankit was forwarding certain points on how it is different from a mail order system in India, and I just sort of echo that view because even from a merchant perspective, there has never been a purely digital business. Even if you look at e-commerce or e-tail in India, I think the bedrock of it was an idea which is successful abroad, whether it's China or US, which was brought to India, but it went through Indianization in a sense, right? Because a lot of the services which actually furthered e-commerce do not exist anywhere in the world. For example, cash on delivery, no questions asked returns, replacement within 30 days, try and buy. Like who would have thought you order four pairs of shoes, try one you like, and then so those constructs are maybe not very viable, but very essential to e-commerce in India, right? So it's in a way the so to say digital brand also emulating the very offline world in the model of operation. And even as consumers, there's no pure native. We are also natives in certain ways, and we are very reticent and offline heavy in certain ways. And I think that is the beauty of the consumer that an Indian consumer is.
True.
It's always a little bit of both, best of both worlds, and I think which is why it's a very ripe sort of an ecosystem where both coexist and will continue to coexist, learn from each other, adapt, and sort of better each other's experiences. So that's my take on it.
Can I
Perfect.
just make a
Yeah.
comment about Ramesh's observation about we're a bit of both? Because if you had a line which is 0 online to 100% online, and I think that there are some people that literally won't buy anything on the computer or the phone, and there are people who would buy everything online, and then most people are somewhere in the middle of that, and they all change for their category or their experience. And your point about being able to try before you buy when it comes to um, stuff that you never thought you would be able to, uh, like I was like, and that overcomes the challenge. I'm going to talk about fashion or clothes. It's like, well, how can I can't buy a pair of shoes online because I don't know if they'll fit. And what if I like that other one better when I get it home? And then I said, well, yes, sir, we'll just send you all 4 pairs of shoes. Choose the one you like. And then someone will come pick up the 3 that you don't like. And you go, is this real? Does that actually happen? I can't believe that actually happens, but it does. So, yeah, look, that's an example of online overcoming the inherent obstacles that existed for conversion. But I'm still not going to buy my bed online. I need to test drive it in the shop first.
Point taken. Point taken, Tony. Cool. Yeah. So now let's just swing back to the brand side of the entire equation for a bit. We all know that brands that are born off the internet operate very differently. Uh, from brands that kind of have been there for much before, right? Ankit, you'll stand testament to this, that you'll see brands, traditional brands, also kind of following a completely internet only launch model, right? So we've seen all of that happening. We've seen the barista versus the sleepy owl. We've seen a lot of such case studies. Quick, I mean, the question I want to put out there is, do you think, are there any learnings from digital native brands and the ways they operate that should be liberally applied all across the board?
Sure.
Uh,
So I think some of them I think are already being applied. But if I have to talk about, I think the biggest ones which stood out from me after having made the transition, I think one is just the availability of data and the use of data into everything that we do as marketers. So according to me, that's the biggest one. Whereas where you still will see a digital divide, where some people may not know who the customer is, some people may not know where the sales are coming from, especially in an offline driven or a distributor little driven model, where trackability or sanctity of data is very poor. So I think that's the one big delta that you will see digital natives focusing very strongly on, and that will possibly drive better quality decision making across efficiency matrices, across customer acquisition matrices, whatever we may look at. I think that's the big delta that you will see in most of the DNAs of the company. And I think linked to availability of data is, I think, the speed of movement. So for whatever reason, the offline world and the offline natives have continued to worry about distributors, about long supply chains, about long lead times. And the digital savvy companies are the ones who are breaking some of them. So even fast fashion, for example, had usually a 6 month or a 1 year lead time. There was always challenges around uh, predicting what will be trending next year, which fast fashion is turning on its head, and it's saying that if there can be fast food, why can there not be fast fashion, where it can come on and tap into a topical insight which can last for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I can still get that fashion out to customers in that period. So this, I think, is all being powered by data at the core, which I think digital companies have abundance of, and that allows to power ML or AI or anything else that you want to build on top of it. And I think availability of data is the new currency of the 21st century, if I can call it that. And whoever has access to data about your customers, your customer touch points, and how customers interact with you will eventually be able to innovate with speed, innovate with fresh ideas as well, which can lead to all the solutions that customers will love going forward. I think this is, according to me, the real big delta, because even offline companies have great marketing, they have great talent, they have great insights, they understand the customers beautifully well as well. But I think they at times are not as data led as some of the digital natives can be.
Thank you, Ankit. Ramesh, can I engage you with this question as well?
Yeah, I before I talk about that, there's a very interesting point where Ankit just sort of left the conversation off, right? And
Okay.
the point was around data and how well you can utilize it, being a digital native, right? The maybe not at scale, but a minor corollary to that would be also personalization, right? And I think that's where traditionally in India, the offline world, offline retail specifically, has personalization, customization, that one-on-one, relationship that you built over years and years and decades with your engagement area and customer base is going to be very difficult to replace. And I think that's the next avenue for maybe the digital only brands to sort of grow in, using the data that they are privy to, right? And try and replicate that experience. But if I were to sort of come back to what Denny is asking, in terms of, there is enough and plenty to learn from the uh, digital only brands, right? And in my mind, I think it's not so much about just the digital only brand, but essentially what it has led to in terms of the landscape of marketing, communication, and exposure for users in general, right? Take 3 decades
Right.
back, there was only one channel. There was All India Radio, and there were only a few brands, Sibaka and Binaka, and very very few brands. Which we today, it's a world where in a minute there are at least 5 brands consciously and subconsciously consumed. So I think accepting that it is going to be a problem of overexposure and across multiple platforms, and therefore being open to uh, being present on multiple platforms or avenues is the way forward, is what will move the needle, because the consumer is not just looking for a physical experience. They might be on Instagram, they might be on social commerce, they might be browsing something on YouTube or Google for that matter, or searching for a store review. So I think trying to adapt to the changing consumer uh, landscape and being open to furthering your avenues, being present in as many channels as possible, is probably a very good way to hedge your bets in the current ecosystem, I suppose.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for summarizing that, Ramesh. Um, the next point is kind of, I'm going to take this to Tony first. So this is traditionally about how do you think legacy brands can leverage their brand value in the supercharged, revolutionized retail scenario? What would you say would be your takeaways?
Brand is still so important, because if you're in an online shopping environment and you have to choose, unless you like the brand, it doesn't form part of your consideration set. So the
Agreed.
brand, and then so I've got my point. I wrote some notes this afternoon. So in my mind, the three criteria for online purchase are brand, price, and customer review. And the brand, a lot of people just buy on price, and they're like the people who aren't really on this conference because we're all about brands. We're the cool marketing and advertising people, so we're into brands because they make us feel good about ourselves. So legacy brands certainly need to succeed in the online environment, uh, and brands that have managed to deal with changing technology and route to market are the ones that continue to be successful. Um, I cycle. There's an Italian cycling brand called Campagnolo. They've been around for like 90 years,
Okay.
and they're a brand that continues to be successful in the bike shop and in the online cycling retail environment because they are a strong, credible brand. They are the Ferrari of cycling, and Ferrari is still Ferrari. So brands have legacy and will continue to be successful. But then you go, well, there's brands that didn't really manage to deal with online retailing, and generally the brands that failed were the ones that didn't retail. Sorry, brands fail because they didn't change with changing technology. Hello, Nokia. And retailers failed because they failed to accommodate the changing needs or requirements of the shopper. So those brands that have been unsuccessful didn't adapt, didn't evolve. But a strong brand will always be part of the consideration set, and that's the most important step.
Sure, Tony. Ankit, I'm going to come to you next with this because you've actually bridged that gap from traditional to the native brand, so to say. So, what would you say, or what should legacy brands kind of do to kind of ensure that they're still relevant in this new age of retail?
Sure. So I think what Tony mentioned is absolutely correct. I think the trust that a legacy brand enjoys, the DNA that they have, the top of mind recall that they have, or the preference that they have with customers, all of them continue in the digital era as well. And customers are essentially the same. They're just choosing to transact not in a shop but on an online store. Due to any complications or any convenience factors that may be driving them to that decision, but they're still seeking brands. And while there's a large private label play that may happen in modern trade or that may happen on e-commerce as well, largely customers are still brand conscious and they're still going after similar brands, with the exceptions of some price cutters or cost cutter brands as well, who may have gained share at the expense of the Nokias of the world. But the core essence of why people trust a brand still continues to hold true in the digital era as well. The relative importance between pricing and value may change from online to offline, because the some of the experience cues that a brand can create in an offline environment is harder to create on an online environment. And we have examples of brands that have done this well. So Samsung, for example, was one of the brands. I think Pranesh was also here yesterday. And Samsung
Yes.
created Samsung M series. It was a it was largely a brand that you will call a dinosaur in the digital world, but they chose to change that on its head, and they chose to adapt and learn from what the digital customer wanted, and created a sub brand which worked for the customer. And that was started in India, started in a collaboration with Amazon, which has now gone global as well. And that's where you see a brand taking the legacy factors that are making it very strong and leveraging it for a slightly different use case, slightly different customer, and creating something which is of great value to customers and the brand as well.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you for that. And that's a beautiful example you took, by the way, Ankit. Um, right. On my next one, I'm going to come to you, Ramesh, because you're the one who kind of said that there is no black and white. It's all gray, right? So
Yeah.
in this hybrid world of this entire retail landscape is now a hybrid model, so to say. Where do you think social commerce fits in into this?
All right. Oh, that's I think that's the one part of e-commerce which I personally am very excited about. Because I think it marries. This time, I'm not taking a contrarian view, Denny. I'm saying it marries the best of both worlds into one, right? Because come to think of it, shopping and is a very it releases dopamine, right? We all feel positive about it in various categories, right? And especially fashion is the closest example of it. And even to this day, there are a lot of people who actually think of it as a social occasion. You need to have your friends with you. You need to actually go and see it in a physical store, and those experiences are very difficult to replicate online, right? And social commerce has taken up in a big way in India. I mean, the projections are anywhere between 200 to 50 million by the end of 2022. I think it's doing two things. First is the entire loop of validation, social approval, social proof, reviews, feedback is now very quick and in a digital space. So what you were missing out earlier, in terms of your friends being there, your the people you want uh, to take advice from, is now very closely on that one platform itself, right? Instagram is a perfect example. You like something, you see something, share it, quickly get, will it look good on me? Not. And there you go. So you've just replicated that entire offline buying experience online. I think that's a big plus. The other is for the merchant ecosystem is thriving, right? A lot of niche brands, smaller retailers who create very curated, personalized products. They have a very good eye for what the consumer wants. And by the way, that's a very big gap because a lot of the large brands, large retailers do not aggregate or retail those products. Long tail is expensive at the end of the day, right?
True.
And there is a consumer need. I think social commerce beautifully fits that in because it gives visibility to those smaller players, smaller merchants. Everyone can have a storefront. Everyone can market their unique niche of offering. So I think it works beautifully both for the merchant and the consumer ecosystem, and it is online. So I think it is a very exciting space in my mind and should keep on growing.
Perfect. Well summarized. Ankit, your two bits on this, please, on social commerce.
So I think very similar points to what Ramesh has already covered. I think shopping is a social occasion. It's not something that you want to do alone. At least for fashion products, even for some of the badge brands which you want to be seen with, you actually want to tell people that you have made a shopping purchase and you have possibly arrived in life or hit a milestone for yourself as well. So I think shopping continues to be a social experience, and I think some of those already happen. We already see people sharing links of products that they're interested in buying with their friends and their whatever their version of experts who can give them advice, or writing reviews or relying on reviews, whether it is on Google or it is on TripAdvisor or it is on Amazon or a Flipkart. So this entire trend of being vocal as customers about what you like, what you don't like, and helping others out is already happening. And I think social commerce, which would be on WhatsApp or which could be on Instagram, is allowing people to do that with their close group of people who they are most reliable on. And I think while the digital channels have changed, the importance of word of mouth continues. So I think even today people will rely on word of mouth. I think with word of mouth, what we have added is word of expert, because they do it at scale and they can possibly be the friend and the foe for you for a lot of millions of customers, and hence you see this entire trend of influencer-led economy also rising up as more and more people are tuning to social commerce or relying on social celebrities slash influencers to help them with their purchases as well. So very similar thoughts where it will continue. The need is universal, and hence I think customers will continue to seek feedback, will seek support from people who have already gone through a similar situation or a similar instance in their life. And I think hence the use case is as solid as ever, and I am absolutely sure whatever tech innovations emerge will only accelerate this path forward.
Perfect. Can't agree more. Uh, so, with that, let me just segue into the next section, which is around the consumer verse, so to say. Right. So, this one for all of us on the panel. So, what are the key planning imperatives for marketers and media planners when talking to digital natives, particularly? Uh, who would like to? I mean, Ankit, would you like to answer that, or Ramesh?
Sure, I'll try and open that.
Sure.
I think
Thank you.
with the digital natives, the challenge is just it's way more complicated and exciting, right? There's a huge opportunity for any brand, any marketer to tap into, but at the same time, the footprint is huge, right? Their scale of exposure, the platforms they're on, the kind of content they consume, and the quantum of content they consume is a lot more, right? And that presents a very unique challenge. Traditionally in a lot of other use cases, because you mentioned creative and media planning, uh, sometimes in a lot of places it's a very sequential process. You first crack what you need to say, who are you talking to, and then you find avenues to say it. So it's a very sequential one. But I think with the advent of landscape of media consumption increasing, the brand fitment needs to be seen. The platforms are multiplying. There is no horse before the cart anymore. Sometimes because your audiences are on certain platforms, you start thinking from there and then think what is the context that you can put your brand communication in. Sometimes it is a particular topical context which gives you that brand com or leg or cue, and then you sort of play it back on the media. So I think it's a very interesting and a very rapidly evolving world. It's circular almost now and not sequential, and I think that's a big challenge, but an exciting challenge to sort of have.
Perfect. Tony, would you care to kind of give your views on this? Because I understand that being a traditional brand, you're now talking to a generation or a population that is much more digitally native than were before. So, what would your thoughts on this be?
Okay, so there's two issues. Is it, am I communicating because I want to influence behavior, or am I communicating because I want them to because I want to facilitate commerce? So let's talk about, let's reference Valvoline, for example. The bulk of our sales will continue to be physical. It's not really a product category that lends itself to, I'm going to call it online shopping rather than online ordering. So I want to communicate with my audience to influence them, but I'm not getting them to do shopping online. So I think that's the differentiation, because, and the beauty of digital communication is that you can measure it, you can track it, you can see what works, what didn't work, and the level of personalization is phenomenal. Had a trip to Google one time, and the amount of information and their ability to deliver an individual offer to me, it is extraordinary. I didn't realize the level of information was so high, but obviously I do now. So, to the point made earlier is like, Denny, I know everything that you like. I know what size you wear. I know what color, and I know which day of the week you're home working from home. So that's when you want to get your stuff delivered. Okay. They know that already. So they can deliver that to you. They know which TV shows you watch, which radio stations, um, what stuff you watch on YouTube, so they can pop up an ad there and give you so the level of personalization is extraordinarily high, and the ability to monitor and measure is also very, very high. So tailoring offers and providing incentives is something that digital really has going for it. And the more digital sales or online sales that exist for that brand or category or retailer, the more they have going for them. So that's
Perfect, Tony. Ankit, can I come to you for your views, please?
Sure. So I think I partially agree with both Ramesh and Tony here. I think what Ramesh was possibly alluding to is the fact that the digital customer is fickle. And I think we can be proud of admitting that. I think they change behaviors much faster. And I don't think today you'll possibly see programs which are number one on TRP ratings for, let's say, 5 years or 6 years, which used to happen earlier. So with multiple modes of communication available, there are multiple more choices available to the customer, and I think they have the option of switching between them. So I think the diversity of media planning is actually got expanded, because you cannot say that if you have a great TV plan and a great print plan, your job will be done. And that's why I think Ramesh mentioned that you have to, as a marketer today, be present on multiple other platforms where the customer is going. And I think that's the core. But I think something still remains similar. It's about knowing the customer well, knowing who your TG is, what kind of customer are you going after, who will actually purchase the kind of select category and brand that you're into. I think that job remains similar, just that the media may have changed from a TV to a YouTube to a Hotstar equivalent. And I think that's what I still believe in. And hence, I think I'm a purist in the view that I think the message still has to take precedence over the media. So it's not a conjoined exercise. It's not something that happened together. I think the message is what has to be done together. And a lot of digital marketers, I think, mess this up, where they plan for the media rather than the message. I think that is why some of the traditional brands had very strong brand equity, and some of the digital brands don't really stand out because they're using it for promotions or discounting or personalization without really worrying about what the message is and what the core promise of the brand is. So according to me, that is always the first thing for most marketers to crack, and the media could take them into organic areas where the same message can be amplified. And you can plan an Instagram strategy, you can plan an Amazon strategy, but you have to understand what is unique about the brand that is making it work and that is making customers come to your brand. And losing hold of that, I think, is why a lot of brands lose their way when they start going digital as well, because they're only messaging a discount or a price or a promotion, and they're not telling customers anything more than those three lines of communication in most cases. And I think while there are all of these challenges, I think the best part about the digital customer is they give you enough data. Sadly, due to the privacy that we have and the amount of cookies that we have, you know everything that you need to know about a digital customer, unlike an offline customer where you had to track them down and find more about them. And hence, the amount of experiments that you can do, the data that you can track, all of them will give you real time data or very quick data for any experiments that you want to do. And chances are, if you are a full funnel company, then you'll have ROI matrices for most media partners that you work with, and hence you can take decisions not on the basis of a bark report or a listenership report or a readership report, but what works for your category and your brand as well.
Super points there, Ankit. Thank you so much. Especially love the point where you mentioned where brand equity needs to be kind of built front and center, and then kind of arms and legs around that should be built. Yeah, beautiful. Uh, Coming to my next question, which is now about digital adopters, right? So essentially, we've spoken about natives, but what do you think would solutions be that brands should deploy to make it easier for the adopters to come online, start transacting, and kind of break those barriers? Uh, I would start with Ramesh, if you have an opinion on
Yeah,
this.
so I think when it comes to, see, humans have myriad emotions, right, which drive all our decisions, and in fact, it's very complicated because same choices presented at one point in time, we choose something, and the very next time we choose something else, and it's very difficult to define what led to that, right? So it's a very complicated mind, but that's what makes us humans, right? But I think if we were to look at some of the larger driving emotions, especially when it comes to behavior change, one that stands out is inherent fear, right? The ones who've not adopted a certain change have the fear of going wrong, and the ones who have made that plunge have the fear of missing out, right? So I think the trajectory that you need to traverse is, how do you change the mindset from fear of going wrong to actually getting them to feel that you're missing out if you're not there, right? And I think that's the crux of the challenge at play. I think when it comes to digital adoption, coming from a background where I've worked by and large on digital businesses, which have been incepted and are thriving in the digital ecosystem, I think two or three things which do not change and always hold in good stead is that first you have to have a very intuitive product. It is has to be very very simple, basic, and replicating things which are very simple to understand. I mean, if that becomes very difficult, if the learning curve is very steep, you're already setting yourself up against a huge task, right? And the other is there a genuine consumer benefit, right? In the crux of your product or the brand that you create, whether it's acceptance, whether it's access, whether it's ease, whether it's something else, but it genuinely needs to solve for a consumer problem. Otherwise, if it is replicating, it's the behavior is not going to change. I have to make that effort to come and change my behavior onto your platform. Why should I do that unless there's something genuinely in it for me? So I think the product needs to be intuitive. There has to be a genuine consumer benefit, and above all, I think the some of the traps in some business models that I see is also that they start off without a full stack. Now, this is debatable depending on how you see the which side of the coin do you see. But if the behavior is only partly being replaced, and I'll take an example, is if I today start out an online grocery business where I sell only cereals, but all the wet goods like curd and milk and vegetables, I still have to go offline and buy. Right now, that's not a full stack. I'm not replacing any behavior. I'm not changing. I'm only offering part of the problem as a solution. So I think these three things, if someone applies and gets it right, they have a very good case to make for themselves in their journey towards digital.
Lovely. Ankit, can I also engage you on this question, please?
Sure. So I think Ramesh has covered the key points that I also wanted to mention. I think one of the key aspects here is that how can you lower the leap of faith, because it's still a leap of faith for a customer who has never shopped online to do the first online transaction or the first online shopping action. So they may be buying IRCTC tickets online, or they may be buying a Book My Show ticket online, but still it's a transaction which they make for a good or a product for the first time on online channels. And how can you make the leap smaller, I think is the biggest area where brands focus on. And they get it right if they start doing it, let's say, with omni channel models, that you are in a store, you're not finding your particular size, you can order it online and it can actually be given to the same store and you can pick it up from the same store. Here the behavior change is very incremental, that the person is still in the store, they're still shopping for what they're looking for, just that the order placement is happening online because the offline store is out of stock on a particular size of a particular fashion product. So those are, I think, are areas where you can get a adopter to feel that the process is largely the same, just that rather than placing an order on a cash till, I am actually placing an order on an app which the store helper is helping me with, and it's helping me bridge the digital divide. um, I think with QR codes we've already seen transactions go digital, and I think the number of people who use QR codes, who use digital modes of payment and UPI is much more than number of people who buy products online. So you already know there is payment behavior which is more wider than shopping behavior online, and hence you have a pool of people who are comfortable transacting online but who may not be comfortable shopping for products and physical goods online. So how do you make that bridge is, I think, the second challenge, and that's where omni channel could be a big route for brands to take, because touch and feel, all the other barriers, or assisted shopping which can happen in store as well, all of them are taken care of with the omni channel experience, and hence the number of leaps that a customer needs to take to make the first transaction is much lower. uh, I think all the other areas on reducing cost of customer acquisition, or having the right or the barriers to online shopping being reduced, whether it is data connectivity or it is the cost of data or the cost of a digital device, will also play a big role for the next 100 million or 500 million customers that we go after. And that is where I think you have the large biggies of the meta companies or Alphabet or investing their resources to basically give access to more and more customers to experience what digital is. And once they have access is when they will potentially start seeing the benefits and the marked improvement that digital transactions can have on their lives as well.
Superb. I think this is gross injustice because we just have 1 hour to kind of discuss this entire this mammoth of a topic. We just have barely 4 minutes left, and I just want to cram in a few questions that whatever we can in this time that our viewers have actually sent in. Right. The first one I think is from a digital native, so to say. So the question says, "Do you think e-commerce made offline shopping less effective?" And I'm going to go to Tony with that one.
Uh, no, I don't think so. I think that online shopping forced offline shopping to do a better job. But some retail environments or retail operators won't survive because they're not offering an experience that shopping malls need to be better as an entertainment destination for the retailer to be successful. So, yeah, people will still buy swimming pools offline.
Absolutely, that's what I thought as well. Uh, Another question. This is from Pratik Bhatia. It says, "Is 10 minute delivery or taking instant gratification? Is it taking things too far? Where do we stop?" Ankit, Ramesh, anyone?
It's quite polemical. I mean, overease can also overease sometimes is also not welcome by the consumer, right? How much of convenience is too much?
Yeah,
But I think it's a great opportunity that there are models which exist like that. It like I think Tony just said it right. It's a great place which makes both the ecosystems try harder. Just because you're lagging behind makes you strive even more. So I think it brings a nice element of competition. But 10-minute deliveries, is it applicable to everything? Probably not, right? I
no.
do not need eggs which I'm going to use in the morning coming to me in 10 minutes. But there are certain things. So I think it's a good benefit to have, and it does more for the ecosystem than for the consumer, is what I feel.
Yeah, I
I
would agree. I
agree.
think I'll much rather have oxygen concentrators or vaccines being delivered in 10 minutes if possible, or medicines being delivered in 10 minutes if possible wherever required. I can possibly wait for groceries a little longer, but I think having that
Yeah,
capability available is of a great achievement. And if there are companies who can achieve this at scale, then the use cases that it may power in the future could be much bigger. And I think that's where the innovation will happen. Currently, I think most of the innovation is happening in getting the logistics right. Of the use cases that emerge, I think we'll continue to see over a period of time for the customer as well.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm going to come to you, Ankit, with this next one because this is very e-commerce centric. This says how, I mean, the return policy hurting or benefiting online shopping, and what is the exchange ratio that you kind of see?
Sure. So I think this is the same discussion that we had about how do you get a digital adopter to feel comfortable about a digital transaction. And this is where I think no questions asked returns or exchange policies are important. And that's the trade-off that I think every retailer has to make for themselves. So I think in the US or in most of the department stores as well, you always had 30-day return policies in the US as well. India did not, but I think US was always liberal about people having change of mind returns on fashion as well being allowed. And hence I think it's the fine balance between being customer centric and having or having the guts to do what is right for the business. So I think some categories have done this on Amazon as well, where on smartphones where you lose a lot of value just by opening a box, you don't allow change of returns right anymore. And Amazon at least allows for change of or replacements only if there's a defective product rather than just a change of mind return. But on fashion, where you don't lose the product's value because it has been opened and tried by a customer, that is where you are more than happy to continue offering exchange policy as well to lower down some of the barriers that customers may perceive in that category.
True, but is it hurting, and how is it hurting? Do you think it's hurting
So I think
the business?
I don't think you can call it hurting because this is what is required in certain categories. So this is, I think, the same understanding that where is the barrier to shopping online much higher, and in those areas you'll continue to offer hassle-free exchange or low-cost exchange or return as well. And wherever you realize that the barriers are now taken care of, and hence it is being abused or it is being misused by customers, is where retailers or e-tailers may decide to try to have guardrails around what is allowed for exchange and what is not allowed for exchange for meeting financial health goals as well.
Perfect. I think we've overshot by a minute, but there's a lot to say, a lot to go. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time today.
Thanks, Denny.
Thank you, Ankit. Thanks, Ramesh. Thanks, Tony. And thanks, Denny. It was a great session. And yes, we would like it to go on, but we are pressed for time. And yes, to our audience, thanks for streaming in. And please join us at 3 p.m. for the final session today. And yes, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Thank you
Thank
all.
you. Enjoyed.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.